of the world, with dire consequences to both lives and livelihoods. This has unfortunately impacted significantly on the growth of our economies and has dampened the prospects of generations to come. Therefore, there's a need to act now, and we need to act decisively. And standards can be used as this catalyst for development, as well as an instrument for change as we collaborate with our valued stakeholders to develop consensus-based solutions aligned to these SDGs. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we've got a very exciting panel lineup. My name is Jody Skaltz, and I'm the lead administrator at the South African Bureau of Standards. And to those who've just joined in, a very warm welcome to all of you. Just looking at, before we start our presentation, I'm just going to ask that the agenda is flighted. Thanks, Karim. Just to give you a sense about where we are, we've got Dr. Sadvir Bassoon, who's going to introduce national standards and how Sabs is supporting the UN SDGs. We've got Hermogene, the ARSO Secretary General, who's going to look at the role of ARSO and facilitating the UN SDGs and how this is aligned to the AFCFTA. We've got Prof. Roy, who's going to be sharing with us about the next generation of standardizers. And then we've got Ms. Ntiseng Molloy, who's going to give us her actual journey as a young standardizer in this space. And then we'll open up the floor for some Q&A. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the agenda. I'm just going to ask, we're going to try and mix up the program a bit today. So we'll have presentations, but we're also going to do some polls. So it's not just, sitting there hearing it. So I'm going to ask if, Karim, can we pull up the first poll, please? So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to get your opinion. Are you aware of the UN SDGs and its role in global sustainability? I'm going to give about 30 seconds. You've got a choice of 4. Please submit your responses. So we'll just give it about 30 seconds and see what the poll results are. Yeah, I see there's quite a bit of activity going. Got 43, 46 people. Okay. Okay, I think we're slowing down a bit. Should we give it another couple of seconds, Karine, and then we can close?
I think we're good to go, Jody.
Okay, great stuff. So I think we've got about 39% of colleagues in the room who are not aware of the UN SDGs. Some are partially aware of them. We've got about 24% fully aware. And then we've got, apologies. Yeah, so about 13% of us are fully aware of these. So I think, Sadvir, there's some work that you and the team and we need to do just to start sharing a lot more of these UN SDGs. But I think after the presentation by Sadvir this morning, ladies and gentlemen, I think you'd be able to get a fuller picture. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker this morning. It's Dr. Sadvir Bassoon. He's with the South African Bureau of Standards, and he's been there for 17 years in a range of portfolios. Sadvir is a jack of all trades, and he's a master of many. He's led standards research. He's participated in the Sabs business transformation, internal consulting. He's done business improvement, headed up business improvement, sales and marketing. He's also looked at learning and performance excellence, training, risk assurance, and the enterprise development portfolios within the South African Bureau of Standards. So Sadhvir is a very seasoned member of our executive. And he also, when he has time, serves on a number of regional and international leadership portfolios. He's a member of the ISO, he's a council member of ISO. It started this year and his term is until 2023. He's also a council member for ARSO. He is also a council member for AFSEC, the African Electrotechnical Commission. He's a chairperson of the South African National Committee to the IEC. He's a member of SADC Stands Executive Committee. He was a council board member of the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, from 2015 to 2020, and he is also an executive committee member of PESC, the Pacific Area Standards Community. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Sadhvir Bassoon, who will take us through. Over to you, Sadhvir.
Thank you, Jody. Good morning, colleagues, and it's certainly a great pleasure to be here on this platform to talk to the colleagues, our various stakeholders, clients around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's very interesting to see the statistics on the first poll. And Jody, you're quite right. There's a lot of work that needs to be done regarding putting forward a program of a project of some sort in terms of promoting and marketing the concept of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the various projects and programs. So colleagues, now stakeholders, will be aware of what's happening, not only at the SABS, but more importantly, what's happening outside of the SABS in the various government departments as well. So colleagues, before I start my presentation, I would like to firstly introduce you to another poll. Colleagues, so there's a poll that, and the question is, what would you estimate as a percentage contribution of standards in supporting the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? So what do you think? So there's no right and wrong answer here. What do you think? Do standards contribute to 0%? It doesn't contribute, meaning does it contribute to 25, 50, 75, or 100% of achieving the objectives of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? So colleagues, you're welcome to, we'll start the poll and I'll allow Karin to guide us on this. I see the responses are coming in pretty quickly. I think let's move on. I'll give it 2 seconds, a couple of seconds, and it will conclude on this poll. Great. I think we'll stop there. Colleagues, thank you once again for your active participation. I think it just gives us a sense of appreciation of your understanding of standards, more importantly, and aligned to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I see that colleagues have put through varying percentages. 25% show that 25%, quite a coincidence. The standards contribute 25%. 23% of colleagues say that it contributes to 50% of the goals of United Nations Sustainable Development Objectives. 75%, 36% says 75%. So thank you once again for your responses. We'll now get into the space of providing a little bit more clarity from a standards perspective. The other response was 14% says 100%. Great, thank you. So I'm going to move on to the presentation. So the topic is basically the role of standards in supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Jody quite aptly gave a very good introductory remark around the importance of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and securing the future of the generations to come. These 17 Sustainable Development Goals have been articulated as a follow-up from the Millennium Development Goals, and it has a timeline of 2030. So this is basically an opportunity. And as Jody pointed out, that we are a signatory, South Africa is a signatory to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And therefore, this opportunity is presented through to us to put in place programs, projects, and this encompasses both public and private sector entities to implement these projects and programs, putting together targets to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So each government department, state-owned entity, together with its various counterparts, including the private sector, will have to contribute in some way towards achieving the South African objectives. The 17 goals, as I quite rightly pointed out, they are very crucial towards addressing a multiplicity of issues that impact us from a global perspective. One being, which is very critical, is around climate. The other being around opportunities, which is job opportunities, which is talking to reduced inequalities. The third talks about smartness in terms of infrastructure. And the fourth talks to a number of issues around energy as well as water accessibility. So the SABS is ultimately responsible as part of the Quality Infrastructure Institution of South Africa to complement and develop solutions, complement with government as well as the private sector in developing relevant technical solutions that will support the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So just a bit of background about the SABS. Most of you would know that we are an organization, a state-owned entity, founded by a legislated mandate, which is the Standards Act, and our shareholder is the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. This department houses a very important framework and structure, which is referred to as the Quality Infrastructure Set of Institutions. SABS is one of the 4 quality infrastructure institutions. Our core mandate is to develop, promote, and maintain South African national standards. We're responsible to promote quality with respect to commodities, as well as providing conformity assessment services. And these include certification, laboratory services, inspection services, verification, and training services. So it's not just about developing a national standard. This national standard needs to be taken up, implemented, and utilized both by the public and private sector. And should the requirement be that there requires a validation, verification, or assurance that stakeholders are using and implementing these products and these standards, then the services of a third-party conformity assessment services come through. And this is where SABS plays a very important role as a quality assurance provider. The second entity includes the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. And quite clearly, as the acronym says or defines, it's a regulator. It provides a regulatory function, and it ensures compliance to specific areas and scopes of work, again, reporting to the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. SANAS is the national accreditation body in South Africa. It is the body which is responsible for recognizing specific entities that provide services or quality assurance services recognized and aligned to international standards as adopted by the SABS. And NAMISA is the National Metrology Institute of South Africa, which underpins testing and calibration through measurement accuracy. All these 4 technical infrastructure institutions are very important in ensuring the efficient functioning of the economy. And we, as far as possible, ensure that we work very closely with each other, identify any challenges and cross-pollination of activities, and mutually support each other in terms of providing quality products and services into the marketplace. We've done an exercise recently to look at the National Development Plan. So we spoke about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That's at the global level. We've now gone down to the national level, and we have a National Development Plan. This National Development Plan has 9 pillars, as articulated in the slides. And we have a deadline as well of achieving a substantial amount of aspired objectives as we put forward in the National Development Plan. And that is a 2030 objective as well. And obviously it's very closely aligned or directly aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. So our exercise looked at a number of things. These 9 pillars that we have, how closely do they align to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? And if they are closely aligned, then it means that the programs that we establish, the projects that we implement in South Africa definitely will have an impact on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So this is the objective of the exercise. And if you look at, as an example, a few of them, too few jobs, it speaks directly to the issue of United Nations Sustainable Development Goal of 1, 2, 8, and 5. Meaning it talks to poverty, it talks to zero hunger, it talks to decent work and economic growth, and also to gender equality, amongst others as well. We can go around to each pillar, but you would see as represented, every single United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is addressed and aligned to our National Development Plan as well. Specifically, if you talk to high burden disease as an example, the UN SDGs aligned to that will be good health and well-being. Certainly an element of gender equality comes in as well. And more importantly, around infrastructure innovation in terms of building effective infrastructures to provide the services and healthcare services that we require. One that we've looked at very closely is poor public service. And we look at, there's probably about 7 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals aligned to that. So it's quite an important pillar that we need to consider, and quite an amount of emphasis that needs to be put in terms of addressing poor public service. It speaks to no poverty. It speaks to responsible consumption and protection, sustainable cities and communities. We talk about affordable clean water and clean energy, good health and well-being. So this is one area that requires significant amount of emphasis as well. And last but not least, if you talk about the element of, on the pillar of corruption, peace, justice, and strong institutions, responsible consumption and production comes in as well. So there's a very close relationship between our National Development Plan as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to go down one step further in terms of industrial priority strategy. So the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition has gone through a very rigorous exercise over the recent years to redefine or reimagine the industrial strategy. These are the key sectors that we are looking at focusing on to reindustrialize or to industrialize as the economy grows in South Africa. It includes tourism, agriculture and agro-processing, industrial sectors, and there's a number of industrial sectors which and a few of them have already been defined as part of an industrial sector master plan, some of which are already available, like the poultry sector master plan, the steel industry sector master plan, the autos master plan, and a number of master plans to unfold as well. The mining sector, there's a number of opportunities in the mining sector. And this talks to also a very important sector, which is the hydrogen economy. This is an area whereby we are rich in a particular mineral, and this is platinum. And the use of platinum, I mean, we have 80% of the share of reserves of platinum minerals in South Africa. So the use of platinum as an element towards an electrolytic activity as autolytic converters plays an important role in creating industries. and this results in an area for the production of fuel cells, and fuel cells certainly runs into another sector, which is on electric vehicles. So you can see that there's a very wide range of value-added opportunities in the various sectors of the economy of South Africa, which we need to work through and work with the DTI and stakeholders and put very relevant technical solutions that industry and the public sector could use in supporting the attainment of the reimagined industrial priority sectors. High-tech sector talks to the fourth industrial revolution. It talks to a number of initiatives around there, which is Internet of Things, cloud computing, cybersecurity becomes a serious challenge as well, robotics, artificial intelligence. These are topics that are receiving a significant amount of attention globally in international standards bodies and other mature standards bodies as well. And we are playing a role, and we will continue to play an enhanced role in bringing best practice solutions to address these various sectors as well. And last but not least, a few others: creative sector, defense and aerospace, oceans economy. There's a significant opportunity around oceans economy, and this talks to aquaculture, marine tourism, offshore oil and gas exploration, and the likes. And we should be able to articulate these relevant solutions and take them to the market and ensure that there is an adequate uptake of these solutions in the marketplace. So what have we been doing in the last couple of years? So the standards that we have published, and basically there's more than 7,500 standards that we have at our disposal. We publish on an annual basis more than 250 standards. At any given time, we have more than 800 projects that are ongoing. And our stakeholder base in terms of experts participating in the development of national standards is more than 1,700. This is done through the administration of technical committees, and we have in the region of 309 technical committees and subcommittees. If we had to articulate and represent these various areas as defined previously in terms of industrial priority sectors, you would see that especially in the digital economy, and the digital economy refers to the high-tech sectors, including electrotechnical, that the number of standards aligned to the digital economy, which we have published already, is in excess of 2,000. This is about 38% of the national industrial priority sectors, and the amount of technical committees on the extreme right corner of the table is 44. So we have 44 technical committees and subcommittees that are developing and articulating relevant solutions for the digital economy. And we can go down to the various sectors as well. I'm not going to go to the details, but just highlight a few. Health economy. We have 512 technical publications. It represents 8% of the national industrial priority sectors, and 18 technical committees and subcommittees are involved in developing standards in that sector. The tourism sector, which has really been hard hit over the COVID-19 period and continues to be hard hit, we have 99 standards, and we continue that have been published, and we continue to develop a wide range of standards, especially closely in relation with the Department of Tourism and the various stakeholders as well. So colleagues, that is just a representation of the number of standards and the plethora of technical committees that we have, that we govern and manage and administer towards developing these national standards. Just want to talk about our membership to the various global platforms and regional platforms. We are founding members of ISO, and we are members of the International Electrotechnical Commission. These are the two recognized international standards bodies that are responsible for developing global relevant solutions. So as members, we are responsible to adopt these standards. And at times, if there are peculiar differences from international publications, then we can deviate with an element of justification as to why we deviate and adopt them as modified documents. ISO has more than 22,000 standards. IEC has more than 9,000 standards. We participate quite rigorously to influence the publications and the technical documents that come out of ISO. We are P members of 254 technical committees and observer members of 163 technical committees and subcommittees. On the other hand, at IEC, we are P members of 72 technical committees and subcommittees, and observer membership of 63 committees. At a regional level, and this is very important, and Dr. Hemajin Sengimana will talk to this. He's going to give a very comprehensive presentation on UN SDGs and the importance of regional standardization bodies. But I just wanted to highlight that we are members of ARSO, SADC-STAN, and AFSEC, and we play a very important role in collaborating to develop harmonized standards, referred to as African regional standards. And once harmonized, those standards should be adopted by member countries in terms of allowing for the African Continental Free Trade Area to be implemented and achieving its objectives. Colleagues, the important nature of governing a technical committee and the development of national standards is to ensure that we adopt international best practice principles on standardization. So there's a number of principles which we aspire to attend to and adhere to, and these include openness, transparency, standards should be market relevant, going through a due process, ensuring that we get consensus on our documents that we publish, coherence of documents between the various technical committees, effectiveness of the technical committees, and not forgetting stakeholder engagement. World Standards Day does not just recognize as a theme this year when we are talking about a shared vision for a better future. It's about recognizing our stakeholders, our experts, which I trust most of you are on this platform, that participate, put forward and volunteer your time, your expertise in our technical committees to develop national relevant solutions that are for voluntary uptake. So I would like to also take this opportunity of thanking all the experts, technical committee members, the entire secretariat and SABS employees as well, that work tirelessly in ensuring that our processes are efficient, effective, in participating and developing national standards, participating and developing regional standards, and also influencing international standards as well. Our stakeholder engagement has to be critical in terms of representativity as well. We have representatives from government, some representation from labor. Industry representation is the highest representation because they are the greatest users of the deliverables of the national technical committees. Non-governmental organization, we have consumer representatives participating as well, academics, and small, medium, micro enterprises. So we must ensure that we have a very diverse range of stakeholders to participate in our technical committees to ensure the relevance of our documents. Standards are not regulations. We don't have a mandate to develop regulations, but we encourage regulators, policyholders, government departments to participate very actively in the development of national standards, participate in our technical committees. And where you feel that a technical solution meets your policy objective or strengthens a policy objective or even achieves a regulatory objective, we encourage the policymakers as well as the regulators to reference our national standards and ensure and respect the voluntary nature of our publications. So coming to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As I mentioned, we have 302 technical committees and subcommittees, all inclusive. I'm just going to put a few of the technical committees, or highlight a few of the technical committees which are aligned to a few of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as well. As highlighted previously, we've presented the number of standards that we publish, but maybe the technical committees, in terms of their scope as well, will play an important role. So addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 15 and related goals as well regarding life on land. There are a wide variety of technical committees that we have established over the past and continue to develop relevant solutions. A few of the technical committees include air quality, waste management, consumer standards, tourism standards, livestock welfare, carbon capture, transport and storage, environmental management. That's just a handful of those aligned to Goal 15. Alignment to Goal 7, affordable and clean energy. There's a significant amount of work that's happening in various TCs, which address energy storage, smart grids, energy efficiency, renewable energy, electricity distribution, alternative fuel vehicles. And lastly, in this particular representation, life below water and clean water and sanitization. We talk to water sampling and analysis, water and sanitation, fisheries and aquaculture. These are a few highlights of the technical committees. Certainly the technical committees have various subcommittees as well, which go into much detail around the various tiers of work that we do. If we move on to goal 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, and 16, a lot of these goals traverse a lot of the industrial outputs of the industrial priority sectors as well. In terms of poverty, we talk about areas of good hygiene practices from an industrial perspective, microbiological evaluation of foods, feeds, and beverages, mechanisms of canned and processed meat products, organic agriculture, dairy products, etc. Addressing good health and well-being. There's a significant portfolio of work around medical devices, laboratory equipment, health informatics, health and wellness, African traditional medicines, dentistry equipments and materials. It's also very important to acknowledge that where there is a scope of work that is within the regulatory space, we try as far as possible to engage directly with the directorate of the regulators so that we don't reinvent the wheel and we don't duplicate the work of the regulators as well. So we're very cautious to tread into work that's already happening in the regulatory space in various government departments. And we try and work as far as possible together in developing these solutions with them. Decent work and economic growth. There's a significant amount of publications on personal protective equipment. You would realize a number of our standards have been reviewed, revised, and brought in new standards specifically to address COVID-19 pandemic. Related technical committees include workspace atmospheres, risk management, occupational health and safety. And last but not least, when we talk to goal 16, governance and organizations, this is a very important technical committee that is delivering and has delivered a number of very important governance related publications. And we need to emphasize the importance of these publications and take them back to the marketplace. When we talk about infrastructure and responsible consumption, sustainable cities, a few of the related technical committees include asset management, intelligent transport systems, energy management, railway safety standards. We have a very good working committee on sustainable development in communities, security and resilience. This committee and the deliverables have come to the fore in the recent past as a consequence of the pandemic. And then we go on into infrastructure. Our documents relate very closely to achieving the objectives of the national building regulations. So we have standards, construction standards. Related standards include facilities management, structural and geotechnical design, building and civil engineering works, smart community infrastructures. So colleagues, you could see that there's a very substantive and comprehensive number of technical committees and subcommittees that are administered by the South African Bureau of Standards, together with the public and private sector, to develop these technical solutions. I want to move on very quickly to a few of the management system standards. A few of them you've already know of, and you might as well implement them. And some of you may have already been certified to these management system standards and how they relate to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. A few of them include ISO 9001, ISO 14001, ISO 45001. These are all SANSified versions, so they are referred to as South African National Standards. Energy Management System. So these particular management systems provide a very well-rounded activity, process, and system-related standards for an organization, and it could be adopted by any organization to achieve the goals of quality, which is relatively a business environment, addressing environmental concerns, addressing energy management, occupational health and safety within the workplace, and related service-oriented areas as well. There's a number of other standards which can very easily be adopted and implemented by both the public and private sector. Asset management, food safety management systems, getting to the cyberspace, information security management system, getting to the educational space, education organizations management system. In the innovation space, which talks to industry innovation and infrastructure innovation management system. We also have a management system referred to as Road Traffic Management System, SANS 39001, which has a keen interest by the Department of Transport to implement this as part of their strategy. Security Management System for Supply Chains. This is a supply chain standard for both public and private sector. Adventure tourism. Business Continuity Management System, as I pointed out, came to the fore very recently, and we trust that as part of the various scenario planning around business continuity systems, including the element of risk management, they work very closely to each other and complement each other in providing solutions aligned to basically our National Development Plan, as well as the UN SDGs. So colleagues, those are the few examples of management system standards that we have at our disposal for implementation and addressing quite a number of challenges. The gender goal 5, which is gender equality. We have taken a very bold stance on this. We've signed the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, which is a declaration rather on gender responsive standards and standards development. And we've put together an action plan on how we're going to achieve this. And the action plan talks to a number of areas. The first being gender representation in our technical committees and how we encourage female gender to participate in our technical committees. Currently, we're sitting at about 24-25%. We're looking at increasing that 30% in the next couple of years. How do we address gender responsive standards and elements of the standards which are not gender responsive, that are historical? That needs to be tackled. What are the tools that we can have at our disposal to ensure that we develop gender responsive standards, and how do we take that back to our technical committees and assist our experts in articulating these standards from a gender neutral perspective? And lastly, outreach programs. There's a number of outreach programs that we are putting forward, and they are currently under implementation. Education about standards is a key and important part of what we do as well. And this is going to be broken down into much further detail by Professor Rampal today. Suffice to say that in any curricula, we should be talking about the importance of standardization in trade agreements, the importance of standardization in attaining and supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. How do standards and how can they be the policymakers as well as regulators be equipped to utilize standards, don't reinvent the wheel, and reference standards to achieve a regulatory or policy directive? And importantly, what are the economic benefits of standardization? And there's a number of case studies there are out that have been published by ISO and SABS, which you can have leverage to as well. Colleagues, this is my concluding slide. I think the importance of standards is very well entrenched in the marketplace, both in the public and private sector. Standards basically reflect the state-of-the-art solutions. They serve as a vehicle for dissemination of new technologies and innovative practices. They facilitate trade and certainly support our industrial objectives as well. They also support the technical aspects of societal and environmental policies, and they contribute towards sustainable development. It can be used by regulators without causing any unnecessary technical barriers to trade. And more importantly, it also offers a wide variety of conformity assessment tools to enhance confidence of product systems, processes, and personnel in the marketplace. So the public sector should be heavily involved in standardization activities. They should be participating in technical committees. They should be using the national standards as part of their public procurement and achieve regulatory objectives. And this certainly will allow it to contribute towards socioeconomic development agenda. The private sector, I think it's quite mature. The experts, the users of these standards really understand that the use and uptake of standards reduce production and transaction costs. It allows for a greater market access opportunities, open markets, not only from a national perspective, regional, but international, and also has an element of competitive positioning. And lastly, from a consumer perspective, it's safeguarding the interest of the consumer in terms of consumer health and safety. Consumers should get more involved in standardization activities, because it provides an element of trust and assurance that products that are in the marketplace are fit for purpose, including the services that are provided in the marketplace as well. Thank you, and I may have gone over time, but Jody, thank you once again for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Sadvir. I think you've really demonstrated the pivotal role that standards play within the economy, and particularly, you've spoken about the number of technical committees we have, and so for me, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's also a clarion call or a call to action for all of you in the audience who are sitting in any of these areas, who are wanting to get involved, because, I think, as Sadvir has mentioned, one of my passions is gender equality. And so we're really trying to drive getting more diverse and inclusive voices within our technical committees. One of the ways in which we've expressed that is if you look at mining work boots, because we've had more women participate in the technical committees, we've been able to change that standard. So it's not a lace-up, it's not a zip-up boot, it's now a lace-up boot. And we couldn't do that if we didn't have women miners in the room talking to us. So I think the points that you've raised are really important. And it's also for us to celebrate the work that these 1,700 stakeholders do, because they do it for nothing. They do it on their own dime, so to speak. So, a big thank you to all of them, because without their passion and their commitment, we wouldn't be able to develop your sanctified, I think was the word that you used, Sadvir, sanctified standards. So I think, looking at 40, I didn't even know we had 44 technical committees in the digital economy. I mean, that just shows you the absolute importance. And anybody who says, well, South Africa, we're lagging behind in terms of 4IR, well, yeah, we've got stats that show we're developing these standards, we're taking it on, and we sanctifying it for our context. And I think that's, for me, that's the important takeaway. I've noted that I think that there's some work in the creative sector. I mean, that's one of the sectors that's, in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, would take a longer time to get disrupted by it. But I think there's a lot of work. So, to all of those creative economists in the room, we need to hear from you about what standards should we put out, because, it affects how you work, how you show up, and it affects also the business environment around that. Savita, I noticed that there was a comment in the chat. Maybe you want to just kill that. It was by Karen. She was asking, will SAN standards be replaced by ARSO standards? Now, I know we've got Hermogene up next, and so, but maybe you want to try and respond to that, and maybe when Hermogene comes in, he can also tag on to that. Over to you, Sadvir.
Sure, thanks. I think it's a very important question, and this is the opportunity for us to now start talking about regionalization of our documents. ARSO's mandate is to develop these regional standards and national standards bodies to adopt them where relevant and eliminate conflicting documents as well. So the opportunity is that once we adopt an ARS standard, so we haven't been really in that process. We are developing systems currently in terms of how do we adopt them and how do we put forward the conflicting documents that needs to be withdrawn. The challenge with this is that there's certain national standards that are already referenced in regulation, and now replacing them with an ARSO document becomes problematic, because that ARSO document will have a dual numbering, rather an ARS, and maybe at times may not have a national standard aligned to it. And the referencing becomes a problem. But we are working on it in the sense that we've already adopted ARS standards by notification, and that is ISO, EN, and IEC standards. That is about 47 to date, but the process needs to mature. So in a short answer, where the standards, we have chosen to harmonize them and rather adopt a harmonized standard, the national standard needs to be withdrawn, which is conflicting. Thanks.
Great stuff. Sadvir, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think just looking at our program, we're going to invite Dr. Hermogene Nsingimana up next. Hermogene has been the Secretary General in ARSO since 2012. He is looking at steering, well, he is steering ARSO to fulfill its mandate in terms of harmonizing standards and conformity assessment to reduce technical barriers to trade and to promote inter-Africa trade and global trade. Homogene has demonstrated success in all of the key programs at ARSO, given his thorough understanding of the challenges that TBTs raise in Africa and in world trading systems. He's led an increased focus on new regulatory framework policies that look at sustainability, responsible consumption and production. And in the context of these SDGs that we've just spoken about in Goal 12 and climate resilient economies and communities, fostering green growth, agribusiness and trade has been a core focus. And Homogene also comes with an absolute in-depth knowledge of quality infrastructure and how TBTs play a role in trade and trade facilitation. I think just before I hand over to Homogene, I'd just like to take a poll. Karine, if I can ask if we can do the third poll, how important are regional standards bodies in supporting the AFCFTA and the UN SDGs? Ladies and gentlemen, you've got 4 options. Important, critical, not important, not sure. We can open the polls and take some comments, look at the results. Homogene, I must just say, I think that the results of this poll is going to determine whether you've got a lot more work or whether your life is a bit easier for the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got about 65 responses. A lot of people are saying it's absolutely important. 41% are saying it's critical, not important, and then some are not sure. Let's just give it a couple more seconds, but I think there seems to be consensus that regional standards bodies are absolutely critical in supporting the AFCFTA and the UN SDGs. Homogene, I'm going to hand over to you now to take us through your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can be allowed to share the presentation. First of all, I would like to thank you. Karine, can you activate the sharing? I would like to thank South Africa Bureau of Standards for inviting me to celebrate with you the World Standards Day, which is an important day. Actually, we also have Africa Standard Day, celebrated in March, coinciding with the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Please, organizer, can you activate the sharing icon?
Yes, sorry about that. There's a little technical issue with your sharing. I've asked Sadhvir Bisson to share that for you. My apologies for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Homogene. I think just let me know if you could see the presentation. I'm going to go on presentation mode and I'll be guided by you to move the slides going forward.
I can see it. Yeah. I will be talking to ARSO and how we link to the AFCFTA and mainly also linking to the UN SDGs. You can go to the next slide, please. Also, maybe we should have a poll also to ask if people know ARSO. ARSO is intergovernmental organization that was established in 1977 by the African Union. That time it was OAU. If you recall those days, many countries were coming out from colonialization. And as the same way ISO has been there since 1947 after the Second World War, usually it's linked directly to the establishment of the Bureau of Standards because you can fight the political area, but you need also to develop economically. That's why the mission of ARSO is to facilitate intra-Africa trade and global trade through two key issues: harmonization of standards, but also harmonization of conformity system. It means that if you have just the standards alone, they are just document in your library. You need to have ways of implementing those standards. And the way to implement the standard is through conformity assessment. Next, please. And when you look now how we link to the AFCFTA, we, as also as a standard body, one is that the standard have three key issues. Standard, I am happy that in the last slide actually of Sadvi, he mentioned that it's on the safety issues, it's either environment or market access. Those are the three key issues. And how that is being done is what we call the 3 C's. 3 C's is the standard will help you to compete. That is competition. That's why we're talking about industries are the one actually that are actively participating in standard development. Then the second C is to conform. They help you to conform to the requirements of the other market. If Kenya wants to trade with South Africa, they will need to conform to different standards that are required by the importing country or exporting country. That's the reason now we have the 3 C's, which is connect to the market, compete, conform, and connect to the market. That can only be done if you have the standards that are harmonized, that will help. Standards, as Sadvi said, they are not regulatory document, they are voluntary, but when now they are used in technical regulation, when they are referenced in the legal document, they become technical regulation. That's one. The second part is recognition of conformity assessment results. That's the role that we play strongly within the AFCFTA. That's the role the national standard body play when you look at the trade. Then we can only be able as the continent to trade to one another when we are using one standard. It can be international standard or regional standards, or one test, meaning the tests are referenced in the standard document, and one conformity assessment. That's the principle that is 1-1-1 principle, one standard, one test, one conformity assessment. And that is what is on below the slide. The provision under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, TBT Annex 6, on cooperation in standardization. The state party said that you develop and promote the adoption of international standards, promote the adoption of standards developed by ARZO and AFSEC, and most importantly, the number C, where a relevant international standard required to facilitate trade does not exist, requests the ARZO or AFSEC to develop the required standard to facilitate trade. This means that it's very, very important for us that the stakeholders in South Africa, the stakeholders on our continent, start now engaging the ARZO technical committees from the beginning and send the new work item to be developed at the either at the ARZO level, and as you saw already, Sabs is influencing the international standardization bodies and is also a member of ARZO as the council, and so many technical committees Sabs is represented. You need really to influence the standard at the regional level. Next, please. If you look at why it is very important, you saw the document what South Africa trade on. But if you look at the continent, we are commodity dependent. And we are looking at the AFCFTA as a platform to help us go from the commodity dependence to industrialization, and meaning industrialization, it's to manufacturing. We shouldn't be only depending on the metals, the precious metals, the agriculture sector. We should also go to industrialization and manufacturing. If you look at the chart that's on the burdensome on non-tariff measures on trades that we have in agriculture or even in manufacturing, look at the dark blue and the sky blue. Those are related to technical requirement and conformity assessment that I was talking about. This shows you that more than in manufacturing, we have 43% burdensome issues related to the conformity assessment and technical requirement, meaning standard and technical regulation. Agriculture alone goes actually to 54% on that non-tariff measures. This needs to be addressed, and it can be addressed only if we work together for harmonization of standard and harmonization of conformity assessment to be able to connect our market, to be able to increase the intra-Africa trade among our African countries. Next. Then what are the needs for us? When you look at the AFCFTA, we did a short analysis of the required standard and the gaps that you have. We have at the ARZO level around 1,300 for something. Actually, now we have reached around 1,400 standards. And those standards, when you look at the deficit, to be able to trade, we have 88.2% deficit in standard development. But this shouldn't be a scaring point of view, because if you look at the ESC, if you look at the SADC, actually the deficit is more than 90%. But we need to make efforts on ourselves, on our continent, in our regional economic community, to be able to develop relevant standard required by our market in order to trade to one another. Then how do we do that? Next, what we did, we conducted a study. After actually the signing of the AFCFTA once again, to see what are the priority sectors that Africa need. We sat together with our members, the state party, we sat together with regional economic communities, and we found different sectors. The first sector being agriculture and the food product sector, that has 22 technical committees, followed by the chemistry and the chemical engineering that has 11 technical committees, then building and civil engineering. In total, you have roughly on our continent 83 technical committees that we saw, and together with our stakeholders that are important for trading to one another on the continent. Then how do we do that? If you look at the left side, we have what we call Africa Standards Harmonization Model, ASHAM, we call it ASHAM. When you have international standard or sub-regional standard, actually we shorten the development, because already those standards have been agreed upon. The technical committees will look at those standards, and within between 6-8 months, you are able to notify the countries. Those are the 47 standards on notification that Sathvi was talking about. We have so many standards related to international because you don't reinvent the wheel. Then when there is unique product unique product for Africa, then now the process will take between 18 months to 24 months. That is on the left side. Those are the standards that are directly called ARS, the Africa Regional Standard. Next. When you look at this priority now, some of the technical committees, when we sat together for priority sector to see even the convergence within the 8 recognized regional economical communities on our continent, you found out that the leather product is among the first, tourism and related service, cereals, pharmaceutical industry, mining. If you look down, we have solar issues. Those are related to energy issues that actually are responding also to SDGs. Fish and fisheries, transport service, that is very important. Those are the 9 technical committees that are very, very important for us to move forward and among those 83 technical committees. Why do we do this? We do this because we are still supporting actually technical committees financially. Financially supporting the technical committee is very, very expensive looking at the whole continent level. That's why the priorities are very important to see where you start with. Next. We don't just deal with those technical committees. We have also mapped. We have mapped the standard, those sectors, and linked to a different SDGs. Once the presentation is shared, you can see all those sectors and the impact they have on different SDGs. Next. Most importantly, one of the examples of the IRS standard that actually respond to the zero hunger SDG, we have the fortification standards, which are very, very important, and actually many of the countries have adopted this standard on sorghum, on millet, wheat, food grades. That are very important. We have some standard linking to resilience on environment, mainly on good agriculture practices. Then we have also specifically sustainability standard. We have 6 sustainability standard currently, actually 8 sustainability standard with the recent published sustainability standard on cocoa industry. It's very important, the sustainability standard. Next, please. When you look at this on the sustainability standard that we have, we are responding to job and economical growth SDG. You could ask, why do we do that? Those sustainability standards, the stakeholders, the technical committees have developed those standards in a way they can be certifiable. The certification mechanism is what we call maturity model. The maturity model is touching on the growth of the SMEs. The small and medium enterprises is also touching on the informal economy. How that we can help our SMEs and the informal economy to enter into the value chain. That's when you develop a standard, you look at the market. Is it a local market? Is it national market? Is it regional and global? That is a big problem and a big issue that we should actually be discussing every time. Where many standard bodies are playing a role as the police, and people don't come to us as standardizers. Actually, they fear us. While we should be giving solution, innovative ideas. I am happy I visited Sabs and the innovation lab that you have office. It's very important that we help this SM to move from strugglers to world class. We are not there to close the business. That is the problem that we feel we have. And this maturity model You can be certified from bronze to platinum level, where you can trade automatically at the world class level. And we also develop the document we call outreach materials, because standards are the document that are scientifically driven. We develop outreach materials to talk to the users, to talk to the industries, to talk to the farmers. That is very important. And many countries actually, not like Ethiopia, like Uganda, they even translate this document into their local language. I would love to see this document in Setswana, in Zulu, in Swazi, translated for the farmers to use these different documents. You simplify a standard document and you make an outreach material that is more user-friendly. Next. And how does it work now? You would ask how maybe bronze is lower quality. No, it's not lower quality. It's targeting the market. We have these three pillars that we know for sustainability. That can reduce inequality when you look at social and economic, and protect the environment. This is one example of a standard that we have on agriculture. If you have those, you have indicators, 232 indicators, then they are pre-required, the critical indicators, required indicators, general and option. Then when you look at from bronze going to platinum, actually non-applicable become almost zero. Optional standards are indicators are reduced. General indicators are also reduced as you go on, and pre-required, critical, and required become bigger and bigger when you are moving now towards growing your market into the value chain. This is cost effective, is very easy to enter into the value chain, mainly the regional value chain, adapt to government priority, it's market targeted, and it's very easy to benchmark with other schemes in a different sector. Next, if you look at the target now, like the standard you have on sustainability, on tilapia, which is the common fish on the continent, you look at the indicators, they are 162, and you can now see how you move forward. And this is actually you can conduct self-assessment, and we are responding to life below water. You do your self-assessment on the website of EcoMark Africa. Then now you see, where do you stand? Do you want now to move to gold, platinum? At least we know we have one of the Bureau of Standard that has been licensed also to use to certify on EcoMark Africa. They have certified one company which is called Kamuthanga at platinum level. Many questions has been that sustainability is not needed on our continent. It's more driven by export to Europe and America. It's not the case. Now, as consumers, you are now seeing in the supermarket the side where they say sustainable produced product. The same way we have been seeing organic product. Now in many supermarkets, you have a corner on sustainable produced goods. It's very important that we understand that the sustainability is not only for Europe, is not for America, is for all of us. Next. Then to touch on the gender equality, which is the SDG 5, when you look at our expert to 2020, which are around 754 experts nominated by the countries, because countries are the one that's nominate the expert to technical committees. We have 29% as women, and 71% as men. And we also conduct Roy will talk about the education. We also conduct the essay competition among the universities. Yeah, the universities at the continental level. If you look at the participation 2013 to 2020, where we have 352 participants, 30% were women and 70% were men. At least we are reaching the 30%, but we should move and encourage more equality, gender equality in the work that we do. Next. The other part that is very important on our continent, we have now developed Africa Quality Policy. The ministers of trade and industry and the African Union approved this actually on 3rd October this year, 2021. We have developed and concluded the Made in Africa guideline this year, which actually will be presented also in next month during the African Industrialization Week. We have, more importantly, I saw also those more 40 committees on digital issues, the Africa Standardization Strategy for the 4th Industrial Revolution. That is very important for sustainable cities and community. And we look ahead to see those technical committee members from Sabs to actively participate in different now committees to move ahead the issues with regard to 4th Industrial Revolution. We have the Africa Trade Web Portal for information sharing, where the countries, South Africa, each country has a representative. Sabs has a representative. Kenya has a representative as an example. You put in information saying that if you need to trade on meat product, our requirements are this. And do you have technical regulation? You put those. Do you have environmental requirement? You put that. Once you fill in, the other country can see, oh, to trade with South Africa on this, I need to fulfill this. Imagine that's how important it is to have harmonized standard. Because imagine the 55 countries, if each country is using a different standard. That's the importance of having this Africa Trade Web Portal. Then you can see the disparities. You can see the incoherence in the standards that you have and the requirement at different countries, either on technical regulation issues, either on standard or environmental requirement. Next. In conclusion, Judy, I would like to say that we need, if we want to move sustainably as a continent, we need to adopt and implement harmonized standard. We need to have the conformity assessment that really respond to SME growth and the private sector in general. We need capacity building in implementation of voluntary sustainable standard. We need to reduce the costs in different scheme that you know for sustainability standard. We need, more importantly, political support. Without a political support, the AFCFTA will not be the answer to the development of our continent. And take deliberate action for gender balance in the standard development and embrace the digitalization in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nsima. I think the points that you've raised are incredibly valuable. I really liked the point that you made about your 3 C's. You know, companies can use this to compete, conform, and connect. And then you also linked the role of standards directly to companies' competitiveness. And when companies are able to compete and they're competitive, industries become competitive. And when you have sufficient industries being competitive in the global space, in the regional space, even at a national level, it allows the economy to be a lot more competitive. And that's how we support economic growth, through standards. I think it's a really very important point that you made. And I liked the prioritization of the agricultural and the food production focus that you've given it with your 22 technical committees. You've also mapped the conversion of ARSO and regional economic communities, and you've taken that a step further, and you've also mapped that to the SDGs. So thank you very much for the presentation. I think I like the emphasis on bringing more women into standardization and standards development. So you can know that I'm going to be calling on you. So expect that call, because it's something that's driving very aggressively at SABS. So thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's been really great. I'm going to move on, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I think our presenters, we can feel their passion, so I've allowed them to go over time. But I think it's really important that we engage with these matters. I'd like to introduce the next speaker. We've got Prof. Roy Rampal, who is the current president of SASC, and he also works at the UNISA School of Business Leadership. He lectures in operations management, quality management, and research methodology. He is involved with quality and operations management, management-related subjects offered at diploma, degree, and postgrad level. But I think more importantly, Roy is just really passionate about standards and standards development. So Roy, before I hand over to you, I'm going to ask Karine just to pull up the fourth poll. And the question we'd like to pose to you, all of you, is: should standardization be part of course material in educational institutions? I'm just going to give it about 30 seconds because I'm really conscious of time. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm also aware that we go slightly over time. And so, Roy, if I can ask you just to manage your time within the next 20 minutes so that we can also give time for question and answers. I think we're getting 100%. Roy, so your job is assured for the next few years, it seems, because the colleagues in the room are saying, yes, standardization should be part of course material in educational institutions. Roy, I'm going to hand over to you to do your presentation. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for answering the poll.
I just want to check with you. You can see the slides.
I can certainly see the slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Program Manager, as well as the management of SABS to invite me to do this presentation, and also to my present colleague that just presented now, Dr. Hamajuni. I think he's presented a lot of stuff and a lot of work on also the education side of standards. But nonetheless, colleagues, good day to you, and I'm not going to present a very long presentation. And I hear that, according to the poll, that education in standards is very, very critical, and so I agree on that. I'm just going to, I don't know why my slides are kind of frozen, yeah? My agenda for this morning is, first of all, standardization in education, academic challenges. I'm proposing a framework from my research on how we can overcome some of these challenges. And then I will allude to a real life case that is happening at the business school presently. Colleagues, when we think about education, if anything, it's not a straightforward thing that we walk into it and get into a classroom and start just talking about and educating people in terms of the content. We've got to do a lot of planning. We've got to look at a lot of dimensions. And the first one is students, because when we talk about students, we have a range of kind of students in this country. We have students who are postgraduates, there's students that are undergraduates, there are students who are at school level, there are school teachers, students at primary school level, there's also junior to them, there's also students, and parents are students, etc. So there's a whole range of students. So the first thing we have to do is analyze students and see what kind of education or what kind of level of entry of education fits into them. The next thing important is curriculum. This is the tool that we use to actually drive teaching and learning. We cannot teach and learning without a curriculum. We cannot have a kind of a session without a curriculum and planning. Now the curriculum also, the way it's going at the moment in South Africa, and I must be very proud that UNISA, where I am, also supports the United Nations Sustainability Goals. It's one of those universities that are really talking about the goals. So in fact, the transformation of curriculum is a very important agenda in South Africa at the moment. And one of those criteria of this curriculum transformation is how we actually change our curriculum to support the attainment of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So that's a very important one. The 17 goals that was presented by Dr. Bishun is actually mandated in most of the curriculum transformation at UNISA. Curriculum itself is also got to have enough material, it's got to have experience, it's got to have a voice, it's got to have research. So those are the curriculum kind of things. When we talk about delivery, there's many modes of delivery we talk about. Is either we have a face-to-face session, we have an online session, we have blended sessions, we have practicals, we also have on-the-job sessions. So delivery comes in there. Assessments is also very, very important. The kind of assessments we do, we need to think about how we assess students in terms of whether we assess them on the job, whether we assess them by projects, or we assess them with portfolios, or we assess them with examinations. And we have two types of examinations at UNISA. We have what we call venue-based examinations and non-venue-based examinations. But this 5 and 6 is the most critical. When we talk about graduateness, we need to see by this education what is the graduateness of the student. And what we mean by graduateness of the student is what skills has the student learned and what value is the student going to add into society and into the workplace and to make life a bit different for the common citizen in this country. The next important thing is always around the table, everybody knows here, is quality assurance. And quality assurance is about three things in our curriculum development or in our teaching and learning space, is that it must be fit for purpose, it must be fit of purpose, and it must have value for money. So those are three dimensions that UNISA uses to look at our teaching and learning. Now, colleagues, I'm going to talk about a very important aspect of standardization. We heard from Dr. Bishun about the work of SABS and standards, and we heard the work of ARSO from Dr. Hamajini. But this is another aspect, is about the education of standards and how we educate standards. Now, along the years, I've observed these things when I was teaching standards and trying to promote standards in the education sector, especially in the university and school level. The first thing that comes to mind is there's a problem of awareness. We have many, many academics in our space who are unaware of standards, they're unaware of the process of standardization, and they're unaware about how standards are developed and what is the use of standards and how it can be used in teaching and learning. So we have a huge gap over there. I must be also saying that we were, with the help of SABS, that our library is able to get standards that can support all teaching and to all students at UNISA. The second thing is, beside the awareness, is the knowledge. When I talk about knowledge, is about the written knowledge around standards and what it can do and how we research and engage with it. And between the facilitator, between the curriculum writer, and to the student. So those is also lacking in most quarters of our teaching portfolios. The other important thing, colleagues, is costs. This is an extreme barrier for promotion of standards in the education sector because costs play a major role in terms of who's going to pay for the standard, who pays for the development, how much of free time is allowed, is there kind of certain kinds of material that's available to put into the curriculum, and that goes on in terms of they become very expensive, and that's why sometimes institutions, when they look at the expense of these things, it's another criteria to say, well, we cannot really put this into a curriculum because it's too expensive. Mentors, we need to have champions like what we've heard this morning is Dr. Sarveer and his team from SABS and Dr. Homogini from his angle from ARSO and many industry players, is we need to have a kind of a network of mentors who can come and assist and talk about standards and help students to understand standards and to show them the benefits, etc. The last point is funding. When I'm talking here, funding in general, in terms of getting funding to promote research in standards and standardization, to actually have an institute of research in standardization. We require a lot of funding. We require funding from businesses to assist. So there is also a barrier for us. We cannot acquire a lot of funds to promote standards into the curriculum. Now, this is a kind of a thing, a solution that I've put together, and this is my solution. It came from a little bit of a research database, but it may not be, it still needs to be tested and to see how valid it is. So this framework has 7 important sections here that need to dovetail into to promote standards and standardizations, as you saw, which is right in the center of this diagram. One of these areas is research. We need, as I said just now, we need to establish research funds. We need to inculcate more masters and doctorate students in terms of conducting research and standardizations. We need to get more academics to publish and dwell more into publications, and we need to get more academics to use research and to show validation of that research into the kind of teaching they do on standardization bodies. And this is no way any reflection to SABS. This is compensated to all those bodies that are involved with policy development, looking at standards, those kind of small groups in industries like the food groups and the food safety groups, etc. So I refer to them as a standardization body. So this is not just SABS, this is a bulk of all those people who are involved in standardization and standards development. We need to provide resources for the promotion of standardization to academia. They need to integrate and involve academia on a wider level. For example, the things we've heard today, some of the things, I must be honest, that Sabir is alluding to about SABS, and maybe I'm fortunate because I'm sitting and listening, but we need more conversations like this from standardization bodies to academics. Communication strategy. The standardization bodies also need to have a communication strategy with academia so that academia is brought in and informed on issues in terms of communication. Youth development, in terms of our theme, we're saying, we're looking at standardization for the future work employees of this country, and as you know, that is getting down to be younger and younger and younger. In fact, at UNISA now, the broadest band of students at UNISA are between 20 and 25 years old. So, you know, those are going to be the future people in work, and we need to start informing them at that level about standards and standardization and how it can be used in the workplace. The other important section is about the professional bodies. There are many, many professional bodies, and believe it or not, they are professional bodies because they try to standardize their profession. But be what it may, in terms of standardizing the profession, they need to also involve their professionals in terms of standardization and standards, and to participate in committees, in TC committees when invited. And these bodies need to also reward the members with continuous professional development programs. So that is one huge area that we can grow standards. And again, many, many professional bodies members are getting younger and younger, so we can capture the young kind of workforce there. Academia itself, it needs to introduce into curriculums, engage with standardization professionals, and also encourage students and young academics, because also we have young academics, to get involved with committees when there's a call for it. We have businesses. Businesses need to encourage the work of standardization in the workplace, either by sharing the problems with academia, because many, many businesses come to us and say, these are our problems, please assist us. And part of this assistance should draw on standards and standardization. Also, businesses themselves should support their employees to contribute to standards development and encourage them in some way and give them some recognition for this participation. And I think this is another area that businesses seldom encourage their employees to participate very broadly with standards. The community at large is to encourage participation in standardization programs. There's many, many communities out there. There's many, many small voluntary groups out there. And in fact, yesterday I met a voluntary group, and actually they were looking at designing clothes as a voluntary operation, and they were looking at a standard of how can they develop a standard to actually, quality assure these kinds of clothes they are making on a voluntary scale. So there's many, many volunteer communities, and we need to capture that as well. Students, I think the essay competition is a great way of encouraging student participation. But I think also we need more of that, and we need to more entice students on projects and innovation in standards to also participate. So I think that's one of those things that we need to look at. And also students, when they participate in class projects or the assignment projects, they need to also dwell onto the knowledge of standards and standardization. That brings me to the case of the School of Business Leadership, which is the UNISA School of Business Leadership. We started this journey, and I think I would say the father of this program is Dr. Sadhvir Besoon, who actually had many, many conversations between us to start this program and look at something. And we had 3 bodies participating to put this program together. First, it was the SABS that helped us with the knowledge, helped us with the curriculum design. They also helped in terms of quality assuring the product. They also gave feed into the product. The School of Business Leadership actually took ownership of running this program, to develop it, to get it quality assured academically by the UNISA management, quality management, and also to provide the platform on which we could run this program. And then the Equality Society, which is the Southern African Society for Quality, were involved to ensure that this program could lead with some kind of a competence evaluation of the graduates so that they could register with the professional body in terms of professionalizing standards and standardization. The program was first started over a semester basis. In other words, it was over 6 months. It has 6 modules. They were all run concurrently. These are the modules that were in the program: Introduction to Standardization, Conformity Assessment, Economic Impacts of Standardization, Standardization and Innovation, Project Management and Business Strategy, and Standardization. The outcome of this program was targeted on somebody who graduated on this program will kind of be like a standardization officer. They will know about standardization. They will help the business to standardize. They will use standardization in the strategies. They will use standardization in innovation. So that means every activity that happens in that company, they will be consulted to look at it from supporting and adding value in terms of standardization and standards. In this cohort, we got 16 graduates to date who completed this program. The program has been reviewed twice. It's going to be reviewed once again after every cohort, so that we begin to bring it lower and lower to what the needs are of a typical employee. The advantage of this program is that it was in a business school, so it had all business students, and they were all postgraduate students. One of the deficiencies of this program, we thought it is at too high level, and we may have to introduce an introductory program to actually get people at the lower level involved in standards and standardization, rather than running it for just senior managers. The progress to date in terms of education, where I've been involved, the SBL, we had 1 doctorate student in standardization so far. We've got 3 doctorate students in standardizations in progress. We had a number of guest lectures on standardization in the operations management courses. Nearly every course we had somebody from either the SABS or other parts of the infrastructure to come and talk to students about standardization. I'm an part author of a book called Operations Management, and we've included standardization as one of the important areas into that book. I've just written a chapter for a book in supply chain, and it's got a chapter on quality and standardization. This is one of the first textbooks that's coming out with a lot of content about the quality infrastructure in South Africa. And then we have the Southern African Society for Quality. We have a standardization network that we're trying to grow, where we have volunteers to come in and we have sessions to talk about standardization and to promote standardization across the board of all professionals that join us. Colleagues, thank you for listening. That is my mantra on education. It is based on a case study, a little bit of research, but basically this is the start of a journey. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Roy. And I think the points that you were talking about, just promoting standards in education and some of the challenges that you're faced with, I think are issues that we're going to really have to grapple with. There's just another poll. So, ladies and gentlemen, we would just like to get a sense from you. Can this framework, as presented, assist in enhancing education, the education of standardization? We can maybe just give it a few secs, and then maybe, Roy, you want to just give us a comment or two? Check and see. And then in the meantime, while people are responding, I'm going to ask Hermogene and Sadvir. There are some questions in the chat, just in terms of saving time, if you could respond to a few. I think, Hermogene, there was a few on ARSO, and then I think, Sadvir, there were also just a few for you. So if you could just assist in that. And then I think, Prof, there was also a question for you. Let's see. Okay, I think there was just a question, but I think Peter has answered Jabulani Khadebe. So, okay, Prof, so I think we've got 90% response rate are saying, yes, this can certainly, the framework can assist in enhancing the education of standardization. Maybe a comment or two from you?
I think I'll thank the colleagues to poll on it. So the poll is actually saying that we're in the right direction. We need to take this framework and increase the scope of it and have further discussions with the practitioners in standardization. And I think it'll grow from there. So as I said, this is a start to another journey of standardization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roy. I'd like to call on our next speaker. Ntiti Singh Moloi is an electrical engineer in the renewable energy sector. She is a supervisor at an independent power producer, BTE Renewables, formerly Biotherm Energy, and she specializes in solar and wind power production. She is a technical committee of 2 or 3 Sabs technical committees, power electronics, solar PV energy systems and wind energy generation system, and also supports AFSEC's TC82 solar PV energy systems and ARSO's technical committee 47 on small electrical power technologies. Ntiti Singh, I'd like to invite you to the floor and just share your experience as a young standardizer in this space. I'm going to hand over to you. We're aiming to finish just on 12, so I think if I could just hand in the floor over to you. Thank you.
All right, that's perfect. I don't think I'll need more than that. I'm just trying to, it seems I don't have access to share. Is someone going to share the presentation? No?
Sabine, can you
Oh, there we go.
Thanks, Sabine.
There we go. Great. I believe there's a poll before I get started. Maybe you might want to just go through that quickly.
Great stuff. Thank you. Kareem, can I ask you to pull up that poll? The question is, are you part of a young professionals program or related activities that seeks to promote young professionals in a particular sector? Okay, we're getting responses are coming in fast and furious.
Good.
Okay, it's looking like it's swinging in favor of no. That's
okay.
76% of the colleagues in the room are saying no, they're not part of a young professionals program. But maybe you can what we need to do to fix this.
Great. Great. Maybe I'll share a bit of my journey and I hope that it can inspire someone else to go through the journey that I have gone through. So yeah, as soon as the presentation is up, I'll go. Thank you. So hi guys, my name is Ntiti Singh, as Jody has amazingly introduced me. I'm an electrical engineer and I think I'll just go straight into it. You can go to this first slide. Yeah, so this was, I believe, what the beginning of my journey in standardization was. I entered an essay competition as with many young professionals. This specific one was on artificial intelligence, which was at the time my interest or my research interest. So it seemed very fitting for me to submit my writing in response to the call for entries. And I was fortunate enough to have made it to first place, and so began the journey of standardization. Yes. So as one of the winners, one of 2 winners, of first place and second place, myself and another young professional, Bendulo, I forgot his surname. We were fortunate enough to go represent the South African National Committee, the IEC South African National Committee, at the Young Professionals Workshop in Shanghai, China. This was in 2019, I believe, October. So exactly 2 years ago. And these are just 3 of the activities that kind of stood out for me at that workshop. So we had a technical meeting simulation, and you can imagine at a global scale, this was really eye-opening as to what really goes on when many different countries come together for the sole purpose of standardization. So we also observed a global standards management board meeting. This specific one was also in artificial intelligence, just feeding into what the theme, I guess, was for that year. And as an electrical engineer, this specific one, we had a site visit to the China's 500 kV underground substation. Mind blowing. At the time, it was my first year, I think, as a graduate working, and I found this really, really fascinating. So yeah, can go to the next slide. So after that, I then was approached, and with some other mirroring IEC committees, I took it upon myself to become a part or a participating member of the following mirror IEC committees. Well, IEC, AFSEC, and ARSO. So IEC 22, 82, 88, AFSEC, TC 82, and ARSO TC 47. So those are the 5 technical committees that I currently participate in as a technical member in industry. Next year. So something really interesting, actually. As you can imagine, when we're there for the Young Professionals program, what happens is 2, was it 3 of, I think it's 4 individuals from 4 different countries get nominated to be young professional leaders for the following year. So for the year 2020, someone would have been nominated to be the leader. So this gentleman that I'm sitting with here was one of the leaders that was nominated at the workshop, and we actually had met at that workshop. And as I don't know, as luck or coincidence would have it, at the time, actually, when I was attending the Young Professionals program, I was actually based in Australia. So I did the traveling from Australia to China and back to Australia. I was there on a work project. And it just so happened that one of the leaders was also a representative of Australia. So we made contact, and we met up right after that. And as one of the leaders, you're actually tasked with to come up with a project within the IEC, whatever you find close to your heart. And with his name was Baoying. So with Baoying being one of the young professionals that were leaders, he kind of brought me into his team to execute his project. So his project was actually one that benefits the African continent quite greatly. So it was to drive. The name of the project was Finding Puzzles, a project by one of the leaders to diversify in the IEC. So his main aim of the project was to improve participation from African countries in the Young Professionals program. So in doing that, I joined the team. We were a team of 4. It was him from Australia, myself from South Africa, 2 other participants from Finland. So that was really a great experience to have been involved in that. So the outcome of that, we managed. Thank you. We managed to assist the African national committees establish 3 African countries to establish an IEC Young Professionals program in their country. I can't remember the other 2 countries, but one country was Cote d'Ivoire. And then upon his handing over to someone else that had won the following year, the African participation in the IEC had rose from 6% to 13% since 2019 as a result of the project that we had run at a global scale. So I think that was really the highlight of my, what started off as me just writing a piece for the SABS, and how far it had come is really, I think it's quite phenomenal. I think this is actually the end. I wanted to end on a high note. I think this is the end. This is the last of my, yes, it is. So I think I can just segue us into questions, as I believe question and answers is after. Great.
Ntisi saying thank you so much. I think that's so inspirational, and
thank you.
How you've been able to carve out space for yourself. And so I think, as I said earlier, this is it's a call to action for many of the young women in the room to get involved in this space, because it's so important, because if we're not involved, we don't have a seat at the table, we can't influence the outcome, and many of us are standards.
Exactly.
They get imposed on us, and so this is a chance for us to really start shaping that space. So well done to you on that.
Thank you, Jody.
Great stuff. I think I'm getting messages here that I'm running hectically out of time. Bjorn or Karen, can I ask that we maybe just look at the ISO video, and then we just have time for 1 or 2 questions, which members in the audience, maybe as the video is playing, you could, if you'd like to put it in the chat, we'd have time to answer 1 or 2 of those questions. Just please indicate who you're directing it to. But here's a video on from ISO. Bjorn, there's no sound. I think you need to unmute yourself, Bjorn.
Do you guys hear sound now?
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
Imagine a world where everyone has a fair chance to succeed, where people fully recognize that we share our planet and its precious resources. A world where people can achieve their full potential, wherever they come from, whichever their gender, they can access healthcare, education, and employment. A world where the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have been fully realized. This World Standard Day, we are doing much more than just imagining. We are on a journey towards a world where people's life is easier, safer, and better, and we want you to join us. Standards are born from a process that brings together people and enables them to make their needs clear and their ideas understood. They begin with a conversation, but they culminate in solutions that address the most pressing challenges we face. Standards play a concrete part in realizing the huge tasks defined by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This World Standards Day, we are counting on you to join us in spreading a message of hope. In the face of a challenge which has been made doubly hard by the ongoing health crisis and the strong sense of urgency created by the 2030 deadline, the global standards community is doubly committed to enabling real progress. Today, we are asking you to join us on a mission that affirms the importance of the SDGs to build back better. Together with the ISO members, we are inviting you to build a world that is easier, safer, and better.
Thanks so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we heard it from the ISO president that the purpose of World Standards Day is to affirm the SDGs and to build back better. I'm checking the chat. I'm just trying to figure out if there are any questions. Ntiti Singh, it looks like you are in absolute demand. So well done to you. I think there was just one question around SACU and the West African Economic and Monetary Union. I'm just trying to find that question. Sadhvir, can you maybe assist? I'm not sure. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm doing this with one arm, ladies and gentlemen, so please just apologies for this. Oh man. Sadhvir, can you assist?
Jody, I may have missed that question. Colleague, if somebody could read that question or at which time this was raised, I will find it.
It was a question about SACU and
Sure.
Judy, I think I know the question. It was SACU and UEMOA.
Yes.
Yes. When the question, SACU is not the one developing the standard. The under SADC is the SADC stand. developing standard. That study documented only the standard developed under SADC stand, not the SAC. And in the case of UMWA, they didn't had standard at that time. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you so much. Yes, I think that was the question. And I'm not seeing any further questions unless, Karin, am I missing anything? I think all that I then have to do is really to thank our panelists this morning. Sadhvir, thank you very much. To Hermogene, to Roy, and Ntiti Singh, I think you're the star of the show.
Thank you.
So we're definitely going to be calling on you to assist us in thinking through, and I think taking this framework that Prof has developed and really implementing it and embedding that so that we create, a lot more enthusiasm and energy for standardization within South Africa. And I think there's absolute appetite for that. And so just on my side to really thank each and every one of you for your contributions. Prof, good luck in terms of your research and the framework. Hermogene, we will definitely see you as part of our ARSO obligations and looking at the Made in Africa, because I think there's an important role for South Africa to play within that. Sabs, yesterday, and let me just use this opportunity, PR is always good. We launched our local content scheme yesterday, which is looking at how do we audit for a percentage local content within South African made products. And so I think there's some key learnings that we can also take into ARSO and onto the continent. And then Sadhvir, yes, I think I'm holding you responsible for those gender responsive standards and making sure that we get a lot more women and a lot more inclusivity in terms of our standards development processes. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's been a really fantastic morning. Thank you very much. We've gone 21 minutes over time, so sincere apologies for that. But I think it's been a great morning. It's certainly very inspiring to me. And so I wish you all further happy World Standards Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.